offline if I would do that, and I said yes. I will be happy to do the intro.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's Scott Huggins to introduce Dave Bradstreet.
Okay, so then Mike has to introduce Brad and JT has to introduce Mike, and it's turtles all the way down, right?
Exactly.
Who was it? Marcus Aurelius talked about the paradox of infinite regression. There has to be a God because something had to invent something that invented something that invented something.
Yeah, so Scott, I think we should start at 5:30 and I'll try to end at 6:30. It was
Okay.
supposed to start at 5:10, but that's fine.
You guys know when Dave Bradstreet says he will try to end at 6:30, it means he's shooting for about 7:45.
No, it's not true. I'm old.
I'm just trying to see how many aircraft I can identify on Dave's wall, on Dave's shells. I see a Wright Flyer, I see a Stearman.
Yeah, there's a lot of planes, Chris.
Yeah,
Those are the small ones.
yeah. Shall we start, Scott?
I think we shall. For those of you who have attended institutes before, this will be about my 13th introduction of David Bradstreet in the Fulldome curriculum, and many of you could probably recite it by rote at this point. But back in, I believe it was 2005, Dave Bradstreet first began looking into the idea of purchasing a Dome and paid a visit to us at Spitz. And I recall, I don't know what Bradstreet's impression of me was, but I recall thinking Dave seemed a little sort of stentorian and serious. You know, I thought this guy, you know, doesn't have much to say, but as he was walking out the door, Dave said, I like what I see here. I think if I got a planetarium, I might be interested in developing maybe some lessons, and it would be interesting to know if you would like to work with us. And I shrugged and said, sure, I'll believe it when I see it. And a few months after Dave acquired his Dome and it was installed, Dave invited me over to Eastern University and said, you know, I'd like to drop a lesson on you and just get your reaction. And he had prepared his phases of the moon lesson, which I saw for the first time, I think in 2006 or maybe early 2007. And I had never seen an astronomy demonstration that impressed me that much, nor had I seen the teaching of astronomy be so clear and easy to understand. I walked in knowing almost nothing about phases of the moon, and I walked out going, how did you do that? How did you accomplish getting me to understand every concept of the phases of the moon in such a clear, enjoyable way? It was humorous. It was interesting. It was just inspiring in every possible way. And that was the beginning of this journey where Dave has created over the years 3 and now releasing the 4th volume of lessons all intended for demonstration in the dome. The unique thing about Dave's lessons is they're designed to be shown in a dome in a 360-degree environment. And Dave uses techniques and teaching concepts that none of us, and I think no one on the planet, has ever seen. And so it's been a fruitful partnership in ways that I can't even begin to describe. We love working with Dave, and every year he blows us away again with more demonstrations. So assuming Dave's head still fits somewhere in his field of view on the screen, I'm going to turn it over to him, and Dave will show you some interesting, unique things about the Fulldome curriculum. Over to Dave.
Thank you, Scott. Your check's in the mail. I'm going to share my screen or one of them. Okay, so those of you who have worked with the Fulldome curriculum, remember that amongst you are people who never have. And so I want to make it clear what this resource is and strongly encourage people, if they've never used it, to look into it, see what's there, because I guarantee you, you will find things that you didn't know existed and will want to use in your live presentations. Steve Sanders and I have found that live presentations are almost always better than taped ones, almost always better. If we do both, the people say we would have rather have had you just do everything live. And right, Steve? I mean, we get that all the time.
Oh yeah, I get that every show.
Yeah, so the Fulldome curriculum was meant to allow me to teach the kinds of things I want to teach, but then it was like, why reinvent the wheel? Share it with everybody. And it has been a very fruitful relationship. A lot of the features that are in Starry Night now are because I ran into things that it couldn't do, and then I presented things and they said, yeah, we can do that. So let me just show you some of the fundamentals of it. If we go to, there's several different ways that you can access the curriculum. It's basically divided into large, longer classes and lots of mini lessons, things that you can teach in a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you go to the favorites, I assume everybody can see my pre-flight screen. Under Fulldome curriculum, you'll see the 2 designations. Under classes, you have several classes. These are typically longer, typically between 45 minutes to an hour in length. And then under mini lessons, this is known as a crap load. There's a lot of stuff in here, a great deal of stuff, too much stuff. So I'm going to cover all this tonight in detail. Now, but that's one way of accessing some of the favorites. Obviously, we're in the favorites. So if you just wanted to look at favorites, say for the retrograde of Mars, this is where the favorites reside, that you can access them directly and just, you know, click on a favorite and it'll appear, that kind of stuff. That looks like a fun thing. Anyway, the best way of accessing it that Steve and I like the most, especially when we're doing live presentations, is to go to the Show-Lits pane. If you go to ATM4, if you go under View, you'll see this thing called Show-Lits, or you can push the F6 button. What that does is bring up this tremendously useful tool for accessing. This is how I showed you the new things today. I put the different Q files, the different shows, under a tab called, strangely enough, New Features Demo. But all the mini lessons eventually, or should be, you know, each one will have its own tab so you can access these things. The PS just means I've designed these for these particular ones. I've gone through and edited a lot of them for Preview Suite for doing on a flat screen. You have no idea how much time I've spent in the past months doing this. I'm now in divorce court. And then here are the classes themselves. So that's, and so what you can do, for example, if someone, one of the questions we get a lot from our audience is, why is Pluto not a planet anymore? And after we get through hitting the kid, then we go to, there's a show called Planet Definition. If I just click that, then what comes up is that show. Now you can't see it because I'm not sharing my render box screen, but well, that's a feature, right? Went into the wrong show. Here we go. And so what it does is immediately execute. Let me show you what that looks like. It immediately executes that particular mini lesson, pulls it right up. So now you can see my render box screen. And then you can just execute it live. In this particular case, this is one of my favorite ones. This shows the, you're looking down basically from the constellation Draco to the plane of the solar system. This is called the Kerr-Tate view for those that care. And so everybody's seen that in books, but what typically they do not show you in books is that the solar system is basically flat like a pancake. And so that particular OA that brings you into the ecliptic plane, I have found to be extremely effective in showing them that all the planets out to Neptune lie basically in the same plane, whereas Pluto and his friends don't know what they're doing. So Pluto has much more in common with these other bodies than he does with the classic planets. And that's one of the reasons he was tossed out as a regular planet. People act like we blew him up, but we didn't. So let me share the first screen again. So you have access to all these, everything in the curriculum immediately through the show list. So you can click on any of these, it'll bring it up immediately and run it immediately, which is extremely handy. So I thought the other thing I wanted to show you really quickly, see if I can do this without. I'm assuming you can all see this Word document. This is actually one of the handouts. So you actually have this if you download handouts under the day folder. It goes through and shows you where things are and so on. The binders that you're supposed to have received from Spitz, the 4 volumes. This is volume 4, which should be coming out shortly. And within those binders are the at-a-glances. So if you're not sure how to present these lessons, every step of the way, I have all these comments. Do this, push this button, say this, right? Get up, scratch yourself. Everything you need to do during a show. And then there's a scene showing you what's going on. So the at-a-glances, if you're not sure, like I don't know this stuff, when you read the at-a-glances, you will know this stuff. That's why I wrote them. They're step by step. This is what you do. Push this button, hit the space bar, throw your pointer at people, whatever. All the details are there. So what I would like to do to demonstrate the curriculum and show you the curriculum and its power is I'd like to show you the Boy Scout class. The Boy Scout class is it's a combination of a typical thing that Steve and I present at Eastern University. Now there it is, okay. So that's what I'm going to do. And because this particular show demonstrates what I'm doing is there's a main show, but it's calling 8 or 9 mini lessons all through the show. And that's what the Fulldome curriculum is meant to do. It's meant to, oh, I don't like this, or I like this, but I could use that. And so you could put these in your own shows, things that are already pre-made, like planet definitions, and many, many other things, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I'd like to show you that. I'll go through this as quickly as I can, despite what Scott said. And hopefully everybody can see my render box. I don't have a cove light setting, so I use a slide that represents a cove. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. I don't want to bore people, but I want to show you the power of the curriculum. We talk about the sun. The Boy Scout lesson's cool because the Boy Scouts, for their merit badge, have a whole list of things that they need to cover. And the Boy Scout show covers about 90% of the things that are necessary. So if you go through the whole show, it takes about an hour and 20 minutes. You've basically given them a merit badge. So that's what we have done in the past. We talk a little bit about the sun, talk about, is it big, is it small, what is it, that kind of stuff. We bring in one of the mini lessons, which is one of my favorite ones, even though it's simple, and that is the solar system scale, where you have the terrestrial planets here on both sides of the dome. As Scott said, I have a concentric seating, so I try to do it on both sides of the dome. So there's the terrestrial planets to scale. Here are the Jovian planets to scale. I put Pluto in because I feel sorry for them, and it's my planetarium, I can do what I want. And then I asked them, how big's the sun going to be to this scale? And usually they say it's going to fill the dome, which it does. And so it doesn't matter what audience I have. When they see this come on, even astronomers, I've had astronomers in the dome and they gasp as well. When you actually see how big the sun is compared to the planets, you see the whole sun, it really is kind of mind-boggling. So then usually I ask the kids, so is the sun the biggest star? And frankly, about 60 to 70% say, yeah, it's the biggest star. So well, let's compare it to other stars, see if that really is the case. So see how big the sun is compared to other stars. Other kids will say that the sun, well, it's an average star, and that also is garbage. The sun is nothing average about the sun. Nothing, as I'll show you. So now, and these may look egg-shaped to you. Remember, I'm projecting them on a dome, okay? So cut me a break. So there's the sun. Here's a typical star, K star, about a third the size of the sun. This is actually Proxima Centauri, the closest star to us, hence the name Proxima, which means nearest. M dwarf. And then this is actually Sirius B, a star, a white dwarf the size of the Earth, but it weighs as much as the sun. So then if we go the other way, this is Alpha Centauri, a star similar to our sun, slightly bigger, a little bit hotter, not much. And then we go to Sirius, the dog star, about 10,000 degrees, and then Vega. And again, that's supposed to be a circle, showing that Vega is bulging because it's rotating so rapidly. So then I asked the kids, do you want to see bigger stars? Of course, they say yes. So there's no more room. I've filled up the whole dome with these stars. So what we do is we move everything over, and then we change scales. And I tell the kids, we're going to shrink those stars to a different scale so we can get the bigger guys on. And the kids get that. They're smarter than most adults. This is Arcturus, about 20 times the size of the sun. Aldebaran, about 40 times the size of the sun. Rigel, about 70 times the size of the sun. Those are giants compared to these dwarfs. And then this is Antares, about 500 times the size of the sun. And Betelgeuse is about 630 times the size of the sun. This is where the lesson used to end, but Laura McGareth, she made me get another slide. She forced me to do this. It's her fault. Because the kids want to see the biggest star in the Milky Way. So that's arguably VY Canis Majoris. It doesn't fit in the dome because I made the scales to fit Betelgeuse. So we have to step back one more step in order to get him on there. So we have supergiants, giants, and you can just barely make out the dots of the dwarfs. And so you can see why our sun is called a dwarf star. This usually blows kids away. The person that usually blows away the most is the teacher. Most teachers have no idea of the scale of sizes of. Then the next thing we do, Scott will hate this, is we fly to the sun using the old-fashioned OA. I tell the kids we're going to land on the sun. It's a one-way trip. It's good for them. So we leave the Earth, hits Florida, which is where you don't want to be now. It's too hot. When the sky does all its dancing and stuff, I just tell them the computer is sick, and they like that. And then, of course, we do a realistic landing on the sun. That's easy to land on. These are all OAs. And there is a built-in sun panorama. I actually have my own panorama, but I paid $800 for it, so you can't have it. We go back to Eastern, and then we set the sun. You guys hear music? Okay. Don't fall asleep. So this, you can see the sun moving here. The sequence takes about 20 minutes. So, now that's a joke, Clint. I can see Clint turn his head like, you gotta be kidding. What kind of crap is that? What I usually tell the students is watch how things appear to move. See if you can see anything systematic with the way things move. Usually they can't. If I ask them to describe the motions, sometimes they'll say things set in the west and rise in the east, but they usually don't detect at this speed that everything's rotating around polarity. So we stop about 9 o'clock. This is St. David's. We're just to the west of, and that really good cutoff in music, I couldn't figure out how to fade the music on previous weeks. So that's a feature. If you look at the dome here, you can see that I've got a lot of light pollution. This is on purpose because the Boy Scouts, that's part of the merit badge to talk about light pollution. And so I have Philadelphia and what's called King of Prussia Mall, one of the biggest shopping malls in the world. So that really lights up the sky. And I also have general light pollution on as well. So what I tell them, I say, let's turn off the light pollution. Let's get rid of Philadelphia and King of Prussia Mall. And so that gets rid of those. And I said, if we could get rid of all the lights in the area, then we could get the sky the way God meant it to be seen. Okay, and then I usually go and say to them, do you see the star right here? That's usually the way I start. Do you guys see the star right there? That's usually how I start because they don't know what I'm talking about. They think I'm an idiot and they're right. So I usually say it's the one next to the bright one. That doesn't usually help either. So then I take my pointer and I'll point, usually I point to Doobie. But obviously I'm getting to the point of why you have constellations. You need to make star patterns so that you can get the eye to see the patterns. So you've got the Big Dipper, this asterism here. I know it's the Big Dipper because it says Big Dipper. And if you're not sure what the Big Dipper looks like, it looks like that. And remember, this is all part of the curriculum, so you get all of this. Those who've never done this, this whole show, all these slides, this is already packed in. If you're lucky, it'll work. Right, and then you want to take the pointer stars, Doobie and Merak, they point to Polaris, yes. And there's an asterism that we designed that does that for you. And then we can show you the Big and Little Dipper. I'm usually much funnier than this with the group. It's hard to be funny when I can't hear people. So there's the Big and the Little Dipper. That's very cute. And then I say, well, okay, so what about the Polaris? Who cares? I mean, okay. Some people call it the North Star. Why is it the North Star? Why is it so important? You know, what's up with this star? You know, and I say, well, see, Polaris is directly over the North Pole. So if you're looking in the direction of Polaris, you're looking north. So watch the sky. If I move it more quickly, can you see what the sky is doing now? And since I've nailed their attention to Polaris, they'll say, well, yeah, Polaris looks like he's not moving. The stars are sort of, you look carefully, going around it. So for those who don't see that, we do it again, and we do what are called star trails, which is a feature I'll talk about later this week for those who don't know how to do it. It's an unsupported feature in Starry Night, but it's an extremely effective way of demonstrating to your audience how the sky appears to move. And that Polaris actually is slightly moving because he's not right over the North Celestial Pole. So they can see the sky is turning like a big merry-go-round, which of course is because the Earth, I know this will be a shock to some people, but the Earth is round. The flat Earth people don't like to hear that, but I'm not sure how they explain this kind of motion with the flat Earth, but it's all right. So then I say, well, let's take a look at why is that happening? What's actually going on? So if we take an alien's view of the Earth turning, I put the latitude and longitude lines on the Earth and projected them up into the sky to create, of course, what you and I know as right ascension and declination coordinates, celestial coordinates. And the North Pole of the Earth is pointed straight at Polaris. So this is what's actually happening. The Earth is rotating once every day. But the people on the Earth, we don't feel that rotation, and we're the center of the universe. So of course, it looks like the universe is going the other way. And since the axis is pointed right here close to Polaris, it looks like everything is going around in circles like that. So again, I have found that this graphic helps a lot of kids understand what's going on and why the sky looks the way it does. And I say, well, what would the sky look like if you're on top of the Earth? You went to the North Pole. So if you go to the North Pole, you'll notice that no matter what direction you look in, you're looking south. I had to get Starry Night to put that in because they didn't have that in originally. But right, if you're standing at the North Pole, you're always looking south. And of course, if you speed up time, you get to see the sun do its dance. This is June 21st. If you go to the South Pole, all directions are north. Thank you. And the sun appears to go the other way in the sky. And you can ask the kids why that is. I usually bring an Earth globe in and spin it and then flip it quick so they can see it. It's going counterclockwise seen from north and clockwise as seen from south. Yeah, I'm just zipping through this stuff quickly. The other thing I try to show them, and again, this is a mini lesson, is that the constellations are three-dimensional, even though we only can see them two-dimensionally. So, and Steve Sanders made these videos for me. He's a blender guru. So what I had him do was create a video that goes right over the stars and shows you, as we fly around them at hyperdrive speed, that Doobie is actually not related to the other stars in the Dipper. It's not part of that co-moving group, which is the Dipper. In fact, the Sirius and our Sun are part of that co-moving group, but not Doobie. So if you go back to Earth, you'll see he'll snap back into looking like the Dipper. That blows people away. They never think about the stars being three-dimensional. Okay, then I quick go through constellations. We go back to the Big Dipper, right? And the Big Bear is here. I don't have to bore you with that. It looks just like a bear, right? It doesn't look anything like a bear. I'm sure you didn't think it looked like that. Yeah, you guys don't have those constellations. Those are ones that I have. Those are custom constellations. And the little bear. I just like these better than the ghostly ones. We go to my favorite constellation, Orion, the Hunter. Again, doesn't look like a guy. There he is. And just for the fun of it, let me show you what Orion looks like three-dimensionally. This one's actually more interesting, especially if you watch the middle belt star. You'll see that the middle belt star is far behind all the other stars. I hope I'm not boring you. Is this okay?
Good.
I'm just trying to demonstrate what the power of the curriculum by going through this lesson, as quickly as I can.
Very good.
So that's my buddy Orion. So then what I do is I go through the constellation because they have to identify like 12 constellations or something like that. So go back to Orion, and I'd like to show them the Orion Nebula M42. So I'm going to center up my telescope and do a nice zoom in. They really like this too. And what's really cool about Starry Night is as you zoom in, you see more and more stars. I try to emphasize to them that these are not just made up stars. These are real stars in the database. And I asked them, you know, as we see this thing, what do you think it is? What do you think the most common answer is?
A black hole.
That's a common answer, but not the
UFO.
common answer. What is it?
UFO.
Nope. Most people call this a galaxy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the most common answer I get.
Hmm.
And every once in a while, somebody will say nebula. So anyway, so imagine that filling the dome. So that's kind of fun. And you can do that with any object, you know, if you're not doing a winter sky. I just pick a winter sky because that's when I do most of my shows. Take the belt down, the big dog, right? And then the little dog. He's very cute. The girls always make a noise when I show the little dog, always. And then Taurus. So what I'm doing now is introducing them to the constellations on the ecliptic, which they know of as the zodiac. So you've got Leo. In between is Cancer. I don't go Gemini, Cancer, Leo, because you can't find Cancer to save your life. So it's Gemini, Leo, go in between to find Cancer.
Mm.
I can find it because they know where it is, but it's out in the real sky. Good luck with that. And then Virgo, and I can never talk about Virgo to kids. And then, you know, just to show them that there are a few constellations, I put them all on. And I put the names up and tell them, okay, quick memorize them. There'll be a test shortly. And then I show them that what astronomers do today is they don't know the constellations, but they've divided up the sky into, you know, kind of psychotic jigsaw puzzle pieces that mimic some of the old constellations, so that every star in the sky belongs to a constellation. Because that they don't care about that. They want to see all the pictures. So I leave this up for about half an hour and go get a cup of coffee. So then the next thing they're supposed to talk about is the moon. So part of the moon lesson is in the Boy Scout thing. It's not a subroutine. So here's the moon and the Earth. And I have advancing time here. So see the black hole? That's a feature. I don't know why it does that. Watch, it'll come back. So you can talk about the phasing. See, it came back. See?
Yeah.
That happens every time. I don't know why.
Hmm.
It's a
Does that happen on the dome as well?
No, it doesn't happen on the dome.
Okay.
There it is. That's good.
Hmm.
We talk about phasing and what's going on. I asked them, where's the sun? You know, so and they know it's down here somewhere. Okay, so then this picture, this took me about a week to figure this out, because I wanted them to see phasing from Earth, but without the Earth's horizon in the way. So what we are is we're, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 kilometers below the South Pole. This is the moon's orbit. There's the sun on the ecliptic going around basically the horizon. So as I advance time, I'm going to do that manually. Always dangerous. You can see the moon phasing as if you were on the Earth, and you can see the sun's position and the Earth's position. So that as the moon starts to approach the sun, obviously it's getting crescent. And the side away from us is fully illuminated. There is no dark side to the moon, despite what the transformers want you to think. So from this view, you can see that as the moon is going away from the sun, it's going from crescent to first quarter to gibbous and so on. So I found that this view can be really, really helpful. And I often stop I'll tell them, you know, when is full moon. Of course, full moon is going to occur when you're directly opposite. You know what that is?
Is that how?
That is the umbra of the Earth.
Oh, wow.
I blew up the moon, so we would have eclipses all the time. Because I've enlarged the moon so you can see it.
Right. Okay.
That's actually the Earth's umbra.
Sweet.
So anyway, you get the idea. So this, I have found this to be, this is the planetarium equivalent of having a student stand at an overhead projector with a ball and move it around their head. That works great for one person, but everybody else in the class is like, I can't see anything. This way, everybody gets to see it.
Dave, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I noticed you're doing this from beneath the South Pole. And I think just like every textbook and stuff like that does it from above the North Pole. Have you tried it from above the North Pole? Do you find this works better? How'd you end up settling on this view?
No, I just decided what I did, Chris, was I did what worked.
Yeah.
So, you know, it took a while to find this particular position. It wasn't like, gee, I did this in 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah, you said you spent like a week putting this together.
Once I got it to work, I didn't mess with it.
Yeah.
So I was happy with it.
Cool.
Yeah, but you could do it from, obviously you could do it from the north side. Okay, so then what I do is, now that we've gone through the theory of it, now what I do is go back to the dome. Okay, and let me get rid of the horizon. I'm going to make the moon bigger. Okay. So I made the moon bigger. So, and there's the sun. And what I do now is and again, all of this is explained in the at a glances. I actually move the moon a day at a time, manually. Now, some planetarium people say never go backwards in time. That will confuse people. Yeah, okay. So nothing else we do in the planetarium confuses them? This is a pedagogical tool, right? I'm moving them. If I tell them I'm going backwards in time, that doesn't phase young people. It only phases old people. So you can show them that as the moon looks like it's getting closer to the sun. And of course, the other thing you want to say is that the illuminated side is always facing going towards the sun. You can always draw a line between the cusps. The sun is along the line perpendicular to that line always. Again, these are common things that we know, but most people don't know. So I go through that, usually for about 5 minutes. And then we take a look at the moon actually phasing, which is kind of fun. And then I ask the question, what do you notice about the moon? I mean, obviously it's phasing, but what else do you notice about it? And again, sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. You're always seeing the same side. You always see the same side. Even though it's moving, it's always, so the question becomes, does the moon rotate or doesn't it rotate? And again, when I ask this question, and I usually have the kids close their eyes so they're not cheating, I'll have them raise their hands. Who says the moon rotates? Who says it doesn't rotate? It's almost always 50-50, better known as they have no idea. Even though the teacher may have told it to them, it doesn't, make. So what I usually do is I turn the cove lights on, or the cove slide. We go through I have a person walk around me, and this is the old-fashioned way of showing that rotation. If the moon doesn't rotate, you see all sides. Yes? You've done this? Forget technology, this is still the best way to do it. So then we turn the lights off, and I'll show you the side dome way of doing this. So I invented a moon called I Don't Rotate, because he doesn't rotate. He's got all the same orbital parameters as the moon, although he's a little bit off in angle, but on purpose. Again, that dot is the Earth's umbra. So what I'm going to do is advance time. And I want you to watch the moon and watch I don't rotate. So as you watch the moon, it looks like the moon's not rotating. That's because it is. And I don't rotate. It looks like he's rotating. That's because he isn't. I just love to say that. So from this perspective, right, you can see the moon looks like it's not rotating. And I don't rotate, especially in the dome, this is effective. You can see that, you can actually see that I don't rotate. We're seeing all sides of him. So then we take a top view. This is a little more obvious. So here's, and this is for Kelly, not to scale, Kelly. Okay, so here's the moon. The meridian of the moon is defined as that line pointing to the center of the earth all the time, or trying to. I don't rotate meridian. I defined him as pointing at some distant star over here, some alien race. So there's some star way off at infinity out here, and that's what the meridian is always pointed to. So he's not rotating relative to the star. So if we advance time, we'll see that the moon's meridian is always pointed to the earth, whereas I don't rotate's meridian is always pointed to this distant point over here. But because of that, people on the earth will get to see all sides if I don't rotate. I hope that makes sense. So you get the idea. So then I asked the kid, Joe, okay, so what about the other side of the moon? We've never seen the other side of the moon. You want to see what it looks like? What do you think it's going to look like? The common answer is it's going to look like this side. That's what scientists thought too. When the Russians sent their moon probe in 1959, 58, I forget which year. The scientists in the United States didn't believe it. How do I know that's the other side? Because the Earth now is on the other side. It doesn't look anything like that side. That was a surprise to everyone. The sides, the two sides of the moon are completely different. So we talk a little bit about that, what caused that, and so on. That brings us into the evolution of the moon. The moon was smacked with craters, big, large asteroids that hit it on one side, basically. Deep enough into the thinner crust for the lava to flow up, create the Maria, and create a nice place for the astronauts to land. The next thing we flip into is, where in the sky do you look for planets? You know what the kids say? Yeah, the word is up. That's what they say. Let's look up. The planets could be anywhere. That's what most people think. And so that's when we do the famous take a look at the solar system from a Curtate view, looking down from Draco. And I point out to them these bodies with the year in front of them, that's the year they were discovered. That'll be important in a minute. And then going into the ecliptic plane view, as I showed you before, out to Neptune, they're all lined up basically. Pluto is 17 degrees tip. These other guys are all drunk. They don't know what they're doing. So, okay, that's interesting. So what? Well, we can make use of the fact that the solar system is flat like a pancake to actually find the plane of the ecliptic in the sky. So now I do something called slides. And they're on both sides of the dome. And again, this set of slides, this actually came from Spitz about 45 years ago. So the solar system looks like circles from one view, and it's flat like a pancake from the other view. If we would see the sun appear to move along the ecliptic, it's not the sun moving, obviously, it's as the Earth orbits. It looks like, and this is why I invented the line of sight thing that I showed you earlier. I actually incorporate that now into my other shows. From the Earth, because we're flat like a pancake and we live in the solar system, our line of sight is going to make it look like everything in the solar system is in this ring in the sky. How do you find it? You can find it by finding Draco, whose tail lies between the bears, which we already talked about where they are. So we go to the sky, we find Draco up here, we point him out. Say, okay, Draco, how's he going to help us? Well, he lives directly over the solar system. So he's 90 degrees away from the solar system at all angles. So if you go outside and point one arm to Draco and hold your other arm at 90 degrees, it'll actually point to the ecliptic or zodiac in the sky. In fact, if you take this arm and swing it, keeping the 90-degree angle, you actually trace out the ecliptic. So this works all times of the year. Just find Draco, point an arm, and swing it. It's very effective and very easy. Even I can do it. So I take them back, find Draco again. I point my arm here. I put my arm at 90 degrees. Up comes the ecliptic. And that, of course, is where all the planets are going to be. And then I just quickly show the zodiacal constellations that are up. And hopefully there's some planets up. In this particular case, I think Jupiter is the only one that's up. And then at this point, I take over and we fly to the different planets just for the fun of it. Depends on how much time we have. I won't do that here. And then the last thing we do is they're supposed to talk about the Milky Way as a typical galaxy. And then they're supposed to talk about the Milky Way's place in the universe. And so I have 2 mini lessons that do just that. Steve Sanders made these slides for me. This is actually right, Steve? This is a video, right?
Yeah, this one's a video that turns into slides, basically.
Video, and then he turned it into a slide for me. It's a Blender video. So there's the Milky Way in cross section, and we label certain things, talk about the Milky Way. It's big. You are here. And lots of other features in the Milky Way. So that's fun. So then we decide to do this fly through. This is called the Milky Way Zoom. This is a mini lesson. And so what we'll do here is go through the entire universe in a matter of about 4 minutes. You'll see successive spheres, distant spheres, come up at different distances. The first one is the size of the Earth's orbit, then twice the size, and 5 times, and so on. So to help give a sense of scale, we're actually, of course, accelerating, going faster and faster and faster. You emphasize that the background stars are not moving at all because we're not going through that much space yet, but they will eventually. Eventually, we'll switch from AUs to light years. We go to light years. Light year is when you don't make much money. And then the volumetric Milky Way shows up. So then we stop there. We stop there. We fly around a little bit just to show them that the Milky Way, like the solar system, is flat like a pancake. And for essentially the same reasons, it has to do with rotation. But we're not done yet. And the other thing I emphasize is that each one of these dots is a galaxy, not a star. So our Milky Way has about 300 billion stars in it. So every one of these dots represents 100 or 200 or 300 billion stars. So we keep going. We're going to go out to the full database of the Fulldome. So we'll get to 1 million light years in radius, and then 10 million light years. And as we go further out, more and more galaxies and galaxy clusters will show up. This is when people start to lose their marbles, because they had no idea there were this many galaxies. Of course, this is nothing. You can actually see the plane in the Milky Way here because you can't see galaxies. This is the zone of avoidance. It's hard to see those galaxies. So that's as far out as we can go. That's the end of the database. But it gets across the idea you're out to 1 billion light years, which is a tiny fraction of the size of the universe, an even smaller fraction of the national debt. So the last thing we do is we make the sun come up. by this time the kids are ready to go. So we make it go a little faster. And that's the Boy Scout show. So I'm not going to go through all that. So I hope that that was educational, not boring. The idea here, the idea behind this was to show you that you have tremendous resources in the Fulldome curriculum. But if you don't know what's in it, you're not going to use it. Every binder has overviews of each lesson, the first 3 or 4 pages, so you can quick see what each lesson does. See if there's something that would be useful to you. You can get in there, you can tweak things, you can cut things, you can just take a mini lesson the way it is, make it a sub-program and just use it as it is, or whatever you want to do. But the idea that Spitz and I had was to give you a resource that you could use to make better, take advantage of some of the things in Starry Night, especially for folks who are just starting. You've got a library of things that you can do. Okay? So that's it for tonight for me.
Thanks, Dave.
Fantastic, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant. It's killing me that I'm not gonna be able to do this in the dome this coming semester. Huh.
Yeah, I've got the same problem. We're going to be closed until at least January.
Hmm.
Are there any questions about the Fulldome curriculum, or everybody's happy? Okay.
What's our deal on volume 4? That's not released yet?
So volume 4 is ready. It'll come out when they update Preview Suite. I think, Brad, you can, right? When the final version of Preview Suite is released, volume 4 should be in now.
Yeah, the final version of Preview Suite will include volume 4, and then the update for your Situms will be following shortly thereafter.
So you can play around with volume 4. I don't know, when's the update for Preview Suite, Brad? A couple weeks?
Should be just a couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah. So you can play with it then. You can play with volume 4 probably, sometime in August.
Is there are there any lessons in particular that on volume 4 that you want to bring attention to?
I'm going to do that on Wednesday. The last session on Wednesday, I'm going to go through each lesson in the volume 4 in much more detail than I did this morning or this afternoon, whatever.
Hey,
Okay.
thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. I think, Brad, are we done? Are you my tech person?
Yeah, so we are done for the day. Congratulations, we made it through day 1. Tomorrow we will be starting at the same time, 11 o'clock Eastern. There's no kind of orientation or introductory session tomorrow. We go right into whatever session that you want. Steve and I will be continuing on with the introduction to Starry Night for those of you who want to stay with us. Mike and Eric will be continuing the Beyond the Basics, and then Scott and Dave will be looking at some more advanced stuff again, some Starry Night orientations, object changes, and whatnot. That's my puppy saying it's time to end here. So everyone have a good evening, and we'll see you all in the morning.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job. Good job.
Have a good night, everyone.